Welcome to Fitness Casual. Real results come from more clarity, not more effort. I'm Andrew Hayes, and with me is the Beyonce of bowls, Kat Bass.
Hello.
Should have gone Beyonce bowls. That would have been maybe too esoteric. If you follow Kat on Instagram, you know she loves a bowl for dinner
I
or
do
lunch.
love a bowl, but I don't love Beyonce anymore. I used to. I don't anymore.
Oh,
Hot
really?
take.
Wow, that was not our hot start, but let's dive into that.
No.
What happened to Beyonce?
I think it's going a little too deep into the conspiracy theory world, but I think what's going on with her and Jay-Z and all that is not what it's meant to be, and I think she's more of a fake feminist. And I'm sorry,
Ooh.
everyone who's diehard Beyonce, but it's just kind of how I feel. If you look into some really negative stories about her and what people have to say, you'll see what I'm talking about. So go hit that TikTok.
Wow, stay woke. That's crazy. I mean, I won't. I won't interject. I don't think anyone cares about my opinion, but I will say, if you think that she's not propped up by hundreds of people and production and marketing and labels, like of course, which is fine. That doesn't, I mean, she has less impact. But I see what you're saying. I get you.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, what are you a fan of? What's your guilty pleasure these days, Kat? We're talking about advocating for yourself. What are you into when you're not advocating for yourself?
Biggest guilty pleasure is reality TV. I used to feel some slight embarrassment or shame around enjoying it, and now I'm like, I literally don't care. So many women like reality TV. It's a huge thing I bond with other people over, like Housewives, Love Island, all that stuff. Because I don't spend all day watching TV sitting on my ass, I really don't care that I enjoy it the moments I do. And I just think it's fun. I've been watching reality TV also since I was so little. MTV, like all those shows, Making the Band, all those VH1 dating shows, like Flavor of Love, Rock of Love. Like I was watching those when I was very little. So reality TV is in my blood. I was OG Housewives. I was watching those shows when I was like teenager. Like I've just been into it for so long that I'm so deep in the world. And then when I meet other people who are, it's always super fun. People definitely can be judgy about it, but now I just kind of laugh because I know they're probably doing something I think is stupid or silly or a waste of time. But, it's about the balance. And I also love documentaries. I love to learn. I love true crime. But I will always have a place in my heart for brain rot trash TV.
Love it. You work hard. You got to turn your brain off. I get it.
Yeah.
VH1 was on a tear, back like 10,
Oh,
15 years
yeah.
ago. And they had all those spin-offs. It started with, was it Vanilla, whatever the one Vanilla Ice was on.
Yes.
And then it was like, then Vanilla Ice, and then Flavor of Love, and then I Love New York, and it just like...
Tila Tequila.
Yeah. It just kept spawning. She might have been MTV, but either way, it's like, it just spawned so many. You're
So
like, wow,
many.
it doesn't stop. That was a great time. I don't watch it as much anymore, but my wife does, so it's on a lot in my house, and I definitely get sucked in sometimes. I won't act like I'm above it,
Yeah, I love when my boyfriend participates with me and like starts getting into it, asking questions, or is like, "Oh my God, they said that." I'm like, "Yes!" It's so fun.
Well, I have a Nintendo Switch, which I know you do too. I really don't play it all that much. I mostly play with my kids. There are rare occasions, though, where I will play by myself at night, and in particular, I play one game called Rocket League, which is kind of like Mario Kart meets soccer, I guess. It's like a bunch of cars that play soccer. It sounds really
So
nerdy.
fun.
And it is, but it's one of those like easy to learn, difficult to master. And so it's a cult following. People have been playing this game for a decade, and people still play, even though it's super old, and I just can fire it up. It's 5-minute games, play it, and it is really like one of those things where you meet someone else who plays it, and you just instantly bond, and you have inside jokes. And so, yeah, if you're a Rocket League player, hit me up. I had a client from my Nike days who we like to this day still play sometimes. I haven't spoken to him, via text or anything in probably a decade, but I'll see that he's online, and I'm like, you want to play some Rocket League? So it's a good bonding moment. It's a good guilty pleasure.
I think we bonded over Zelda right away. That was one of our like early connection points. And if I meet a Zelda person, I'm like, let's go. You get it. So that's always, or like, whatever. If someone's into Nintendo stuff, like me, I am, and other video game consoles, not so much, but I'm a big Nintendo person.
Nintendo's great.
Can't
Very
wait to get the
approachable.
Switch too.
New one's out. My son wants it, but it's $500. So I was like, we'll see about that. Trying to teach him the value of money. So we'll see.
Yep,
but
that's good. Tell him to save up.
I also want it. Exactly. Okay, well, absolute left turn here. Today we are talking about Kat, another thing that we bonded on very early, how's that for a segue? Which is advocating for yourself, asking the right questions, getting the best care in our healthcare system. So this is how you need to go and challenge your doctor, be prepared, things of that nature. Before we get into this, we want to be really clear up front. This is not an anti-doctor podcast. This is also not giving any medical advice. Obviously, you need to talk to your doctor about medication changes, testing, all of that stuff. We just want to help you ask smarter questions. We don't want you to ignore professionals. The analogy that I like is the public education system. I have kids in public education right now. We both grew up in public education, Kat. Most teachers, super smart, caring, trying really hard, going above and beyond, paying for things out of pocket because they have to. But the system itself is outdated. It's underfunded. There's cracks, all kinds of stuff, and they often don't meet the needs, right? There's lots of kids that slip through the cracks. And even in a really good school system, which if you're fortunate to grow up in, it's not perfect. And it's important to understand what are the systemic problems to get the best education, but not blame the teachers. And we're doing the same thing here. Every doctor's out there working hard. Medicine works the same way. Rush system, reactive system. We incentivize pills and procedures over root cause care. We talked about this on a previous episode. So we're going to give you some actionable tips today about how to work kind of swimming with the current in this system. Kat, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think advocating for yourself is really just understanding you have needs, you have questions, you're trying to get something out of your doctor experience that's not just only what they are going to provide you. And this is something I've learned and developed over time. I think it's a skill. No one is born doing this, but after you keep going to the doctor or not getting answers or results or whatever that you're really looking for, I think you just get better at doing this. So it's something I've really developed over time, but it's something I really help our clients with, like asking for certain things. You can ask for certain blood tests. You can ask for clarity. You can ask for all sorts of things. And it's something that a lot of people are very afraid to do. And I just want to highlight on the point that I think people are intimidated of either trying to challenge their doctor because their doctor thinks they're stupid or whatever, or they think they can't go toe to toe. We're not trying to challenge them or catch like a blind spot. I'm never asking questions to like trap them in a corner where I'm like, you don't know this. Like, that's never my end goal. So that's not your end goal. But we're just trying to ask questions so you get answers. And sometimes they might not know the answer. And, a good doctor will say, I'm not really sure. Let me look into this for you. But I just want to remind everyone that like you're there for them to help you so you can ask for what you want or try to ask for something that maybe they're not providing you, and you don't need to be afraid to do so. But I just think it's the fear that really holds people back from even knowing that this is an option, that you can ask more questions. And usually the people like me who've had autoimmune stuff or like kind of weird complex issues that are very not simple diagnosis tend to learn this over time to get what they want. And then other people who I think are very much like, oh, I have high blood pressure, let me take this medication, cool, see you later. They're the people who are not advocating for themselves because they're not even aware to do so. So we're just trying to bring some more awareness to this. But again, it's not to say that doctors don't know what's going on, but it's just to remind you that like you really hold the cards of your whole experience.
That's right. Their goal is to help you. We're going to get into this specifically in a bit, but when I had my broken leg, which was kind of mismanaged from start to finish, my doctor was puzzled 3 months in. He was like, you should be healed. You're still in pain. He's like, all I have left is to give you a cortisol shot. And I didn't want it, and so I pushed back, and we eventually landed on going to a physical therapist, which eventually solved the problem. But had I not asked that, he would have given me the cortisol shot because that's all he had left in his toolkit. And he didn't want to send me home without helping me, right? So you just have to know that's kind of the mindset. So I want to start with a quick story, and this is a really, really important way to set the stage. In the 1980s, there was stomach ulcers were believed to be caused by stress, spicy food, too much stomach acid. That was the gold standard. If you had ulcers and you went to your doctor, you got antacids or acid blockers, maybe even surgery. And no one really looked at what was the root cause, what was causing this inflammation in the first place, until these two Australian doctors, Barry Marshall is the more famous one, Barry Marshall, Robin Warren, who noticed something that every time they scoped patient with ulcers, they saw a spiral-shaped bacteria in the stomach lining. Today we call it Cat H. pylori, something you know really well, but wasn't a thing 30 years ago. Back then there was this idea that bacteria could even live in the stomach was crazy because of all the stomach acid. No one believed them. So Barry Marshall, crazy man that he is, drank a flask of the bacteria to prove his point.
Psychotic. Fully psychotic.
So within days, he developed gastritis, which is the precursor to ulcers. He had inflammation, nausea, vomiting. They confirmed all this with an endoscopy. So he caused the disease. And then he took antibiotics and completely reversed it. And so this is just one experiment that flipped the entire narrative and the entire dogma of ulcers on its head in one day, basically. So eventually the medical community accepted it. Today, ulcers are treated with antibiotics. And in 2005, he won the Nobel Prize, which is really cool. And so the reason we tell this story is because it just shows the difference between medical skepticism and just shouting a bunch of contrarian stuff on Instagram. He didn't just question the system. He used data and results to prove it wrong, right? That's the bar. And the functional space, as we've talked about on multiple episodes, is actually quite successful and actually quite popular to the people who know it. And we have a very successful program where we help people every single day. And we help fill in the gaps, sometimes working alongside their doctor, sometimes doing things that they didn't get the care for. So we're not here just to stir the pot or promote these like weird fringe theories that aren't proven. Everything we're talking about today is rooted in evidence-based medicine and real science. So it's not anti-doctor, it's pro-patient.
Mm-hmm. You really have to just advocate for yourself in today's world. We're going to go over some things you can do. One of them is to go in being very clear about what you're trying to figure out. And I think having notes available, if you don't use them, if you at least think about things in advance, like jot it down, you might remember it better. But I think, doctors have very limited time, and you can't show up with either a bunch of random complaints that are disconnected because they're not going to focus on all of them at once. And you also can't come up with nothing and expect them to ask you all the right questions. One reason we have an incredibly lengthy symptom analysis as part of our onboarding form is because I'm not going to sit there and do this on the phone with someone. That would take so long, hours. So I have people do it before I talk to them. But when do you go to the doctor and, they ask about all the symptoms? They may ask about your history. You do that long checklist of like, do you have things inside your body? And like, what is your health history? But it's not really asking you symptoms and how you feel day to day. So you just need to be prepared, I think, with a short list of your top concerns. I think 2 to 3 is good. You should have examples of when this thing is happening, how it feels when it is happening, maybe what makes it better, maybe what makes it worse. This shows that you're also serious about what you're there for and that you can connect the dots, or you'll help them connect dots, because a lot of times they're not putting different things together. And one issue is you may be there for a stomach ache, and then if you talk about your headaches, they might be like, I'll go to a different doctor for that one. That's a problem because they're not seeing the body as a whole. But if you can at least be like, yeah, when my stomach hurts, I also have a headache, like that is good information to have. A good doctor is not going to shame you for bringing notes. They'll actually be maybe even impressed that you're, very clear about what you're looking for, and that you at least have thought about this in advance and you're not expecting them to figure this out 100%. You are working together. I like to use the Notes app on my phone because my phone is very available inside of an appointment. A lot of times I will take notes on my phone. So they're talking to me, I have my phone open and I'm taking notes. I think it's pretty obvious that I'm taking notes, so I don't have to let them know. But I think they also it's like I'm recording everything they're saying, so it puts a little bit of heat on what's going on, and I'm going to remember. And I always ask for clarity. At the end, I'm usually like, all right, you said do this, bop, bop, bop. Does that sound right? It's just important that you show up at least informed slightly or act like you know what's going on. And it's so easy to forget your questions in the moment. You feel rushed. You feel that time pressure. They're basically out the door the moment they walk in. And because I have my notes ready, sometimes at the end I'm like, all right, I have 2 more questions. And then they're like, okay, none of them run out without answering my questions. But if you don't have questions, they're going to leave and you won't be. And when do they even ask you if you have questions? Sometimes no, because they're just, on to the next. They're already an hour behind for that day. So it's just important that you bring your notes, and I think you should just sit down, think about this a little bit ahead of time. For example, for my shoulder operation, in which I met with multiple surgeons years apart because I was about to pull the trigger and then I lost my insurance, so I didn't. So I went back to the doctor like a year and a half later. I had my whole history of the first time I dislocated my shoulder, every single time it happened, how I felt after. Like, I had a really good timeline. I would never remember that if I had to sit there and think about it on the spot. Things that are existing in your body for years and years, your timeline gets real fuzzy. Trust me. Sometimes I think now and I'm like, when did I do that thing? Was it 2017? Was it 2014? Like, I don't know. But if you can think about it ahead and like get your timeline straight, it really helps you when you're in there. Just advocate for yourself better. Because if you're confused about yourself, that shows. And then you're probably just not going to get clear answers.
There's also nerves. It's kind of like when you know what you want to order and then the waiter comes over to your table and you're like, oh, now I forget what I was going to order. Kind of like that. You have these questions in your head for weeks and then you get to the appointment. There's something called white coat syndrome, which is your blood pressure is higher at the doctor's office than it is at home, which is an interesting thing. And so it's just another reminder of like that anxiety can creep up. You're just kind of nervous to be there. There's a lot of pressure on this 10-minute appointment. The more prepared you are with notes, the better. And I would add to that, Kat, as well, if you can keep a list of the stuff you have tried, that will also help quickly rule out, because otherwise they might say, oh, do an elimination diet, see you later. And you can be like, oh, I did an elimination diet. And so having what you have tried will also help. Just be honest. We've talked about this before. Like, don't say you work out 3 days a week if you don't. Don't say you've done an elimination diet if you haven't. I've rarely met a person, Kat, I'm probably agree, who's like really done an elimination diet appropriately on their own. It's just quite difficult. And so just be open and honest about that, because those are the types of things that, if you rule it out, can make your appointment move much faster, but don't, lie or mislead your doctor either.
That is a good point. On that question where it says how many alcoholic drinks do you have a week, and everyone puts a number that they wish they drank and not the reality, like, you're shooting yourself in the foot if you are lying. And I know sometimes people don't want to admit those things, but yeah, always important to be super truthful.
Yep.
So the next thing to advocate for yourself is asking for the why. If your doctor is recommending a test, a medication, or maybe dismisses a concern you have, you can ask them, why is this the approach we're going with, or what is this ruling out? You should always be able to ask why, and they should have a very clear answer on why. Usually they're very good at actually giving a very simplified approach. Usually they don't go into crazy scientific things. They make it pretty clear cut, but I think it's always good to just be like, why are we doing this and not a potential other thing? Like, what's the success you've seen with other people like this? Have you treated anyone else like me? Like, I think those things are really important for you to ask. And keep in mind, you're not being difficult. You're just making sure you understand the reasoning behind the choices. I cannot tell you how many times I've spoken to people who are taking medications, and I will literally go, what is this for? How long have you been taking it? And they're kind of like, not really sure. Maybe 10 years. They don't even know what they're taking for so long. That just blows my mind. That is so wild that you just, have such blind trust and you're like, cool, I'll take that thing. And then you forget why. And we're going to go over this in a second, but coming off of something also is a conversation to have. But you should know why you're taking something, or know if there's an alternate approach or whatever. You can always ask if there's an alternate approach. And you also can not make a decision in the moment if you need to go home, do some research, and take some time to make a choice. You don't need to decide on the spot if you want to get that surgery done or take that medication or, get your gallbladder removed. You have time to think about these things. You may not feel like you do, but you do. You never have to decide something in the moment. You could totally ask for more clarity, maybe ask them, where can I find more information about this? They should be able to answer all those questions, and it also just shows that you care. I think in female, gynecological situations, this is huge that women need to ask for when it comes to birth control, fertility treatments, hysterectomies, all of these things. When it comes to a lot of these conditions, is women are freaked out and they just will do the first thing that sounds okay, but there's a lot of other stuff we could do, and you could always be like, I'm someone who I really like a functional approach, I like to try more natural things first. Is there anything I can do? Usually they will respect that, and maybe there is. I don't know, maybe they won't be able to guide you, but usually they'll say you could. Like, for example, I have an endocrinologist who does nothing but deal with hormones. I've mentioned what I do. I've mentioned the things I am focused on and whatnot. And she's just always said to me, if you want to do that, go ahead. It's not my lane. It's not something I can guide you on. I have no clue about these things, but she makes it clear that is an alternate pathway. It's just not something I can support you on. But she doesn't say, oh, don't do that. That's stupid or whatever. But she just lets me know, sure, if you want to go down that road, go ahead. doesn't change the advice that I'm going to give you,
Right.
Which I respect, I get it. But it just goes to show, like, there are other things out there that they might not know either. Another thing to do is request the full picture. This is most apparent when it comes to labs. I think they will really give labs that they know insurance will cover. And a lot of times if you ask for a lab that they don't have a reason, insurance won't cover it, so they're not going to give it to you. So a single lab marker, as we know, is not all that helpful. This is probably the most apparent when it comes to thyroid tests. Like your TSH, I don't care. I want to know your T3, your T4, all these other things. Even if your TSH is normal, the other ones might not be. I can't tell you how many times I've seen clients with slightly off TSH and their doctor's like, well, it's okay. Like, they don't want to test more things. And then, like, that drives me nuts because I'm like, something could be really wrong here. And then these thyroid stuff doesn't just like auto-correct, that's not how it works. So asking for complementary labs is really important. You could ask for more imaging. You're just looking for a more complete view. You don't need to have to know really what you're asking for, but you can sense when things are incomplete. I have an advantage that I know if I want very specific labs or tests or whatever. That's just because I'm more knowledgeable on these things, obviously. But you don't need to know these things to know that there's maybe more things we can look at. And sometimes all you have to do is ask. When people go to the doctor, if I say, like, ask for these labs, most of the time they get it. Sometimes there's been pushback of, like, they need a reason why. And I'm like, can't you just wanting to know what your ApoB is? Because you have high cholesterol, like, isn't that a reason why? It's not. But, a good doctor might also get a little crafty and figure out a reason why so you can get the test. Like, a lot of times it's not that hard, but it's just not going to happen if you're not asking for it. And this is where, research online can be very helpful these days to figure out other labs to get. Like, you do not need to understand labs in order to ask for more. I was doing that well before I knew how to read blood work and stuff. That's part of how I got good at understanding blood work, is I did it for myself, based on my own labs. I just was curious, and kind of anyone can do the same, not like you need to, but just know that there's more out there, and you can Google a list and bring it to your doctor and ask, and you might get it.
That's right. And if you, first of all, be kind, and also, position it from a form of asking questions.
Yes.
Because they will probably have a good answer, right? They're really, really knowledgeable on testing. That's one of the areas where they really excel. And so they're going to know if what you're asking for is crazy or not. T3, T4 are expensive tests, so they're not just going to pull those without you asking. But if you connect the dots to thyroid, they might. And to give you an example too, from my history, I had a fainting episode, which I mentioned, and went to the cardiologist, and I did all kinds of tests, and everything came back good, which is great. But when I was there, it was the classic, like, he barely even sat down. He saw me. He was like, late 30s, in good shape, like, you're fine here kind of thing. And I was like, well, wait a second. This happened. Here's what I've researched. I was like, my goal is to walk away from this appointment knowing that I'm not going to have, like, a serious cardiac event in the next 5 years. Like, I'm okay making lifestyle changes. I'm first team, all lifestyle change, trust me, But, like, is there something serious? How do we rule that out? And so he was like, okay. He took that question and was like, here are the 3 tests that we have to run. And if we can run these 3 tests and they all come back good, then we know that, like, it's incredibly unlikely. And so that instance, it was like an echocardiogram, which is like a, an image, basically an ultrasound of your heart, and then wearing a heart monitor over the course of several weeks to see, like, the ebbs and flows. But he's like, if we can do those 2 things, then I can say, like, almost with certainty that you're fine. But had I not asked for those, it's possible that we missed something. And I remember talking to the ultrasound tech, because they're really smart and they're not doctors, but they do this all day. And I was like, is this overkill that I'm here doing an ultrasound on my heart, 38, one episode? And she was like, nope. She's like, I see this all the time. I see people who are 35 who do 100 miles a week on their bike, and then they pass out because they have a heart murmur or arrhythmia or whatever. And she's like, you're doing the right thing. She's like, you just never know. And so I think it's really important to come prepared with, like, how do we at least, now that I'm here spending money, rule out by doing the best labs that we can, or the best imaging that we can, or the best tests that we can, because you're already kind of a sunk cost and you want to walk away with a complete picture.
Yeah, it's so true. It's like and another test a lot of people should ask for, we're going to get into specifics later, but your cholesterol, like you can ask for coronary CT scans to actually see plaque buildup. I think that's just one of the most important ones no one knows exists. You can actually see if you have a plaque risk or is it just high cholesterol that's not actually like doing anything in your body. I've seen, usually they only do this with like people maybe like 50 and up or like a clear reason to, but we've seen people with high cholesterol who have zero plaque buildup in their body. So like that really takes the edge off of your worrying about your cholesterol issues.
That's
All
a big
right, so
one that I would love to see. ApoB, I think, is just, even the American Heart Association is like, it's better than LDL. Why don't we test it? I would love to see that. But the plaque risk in general, I think, is one that a lot of people will talk about on, Reddit, Instagram, whatever, of like, this saved my life had I not asked for it. I would like to see that become more of a standard test. I think it's a shame.
Yeah, so true. And I've had people ask for it and they get it. You just like literally have to ask. That's all. All right, so next one is don't be afraid to slow things down. If you're feeling rushed, you can take a moment. You can say like, I just need a moment to process everything. I think asking for maybe them to re-explain something in plain language, or you could be like, I'm just having a hard time understanding that. Can you like make it a little bit easier? Explain to me like I'm 5 is actually a very good way of being like, I just need the most simple way to understand. And then you could repeat it back. You're like, all right, so what I'm getting, or what you're saying is that I have this, it does this, blah, blah, blah. Like you could repeat things back if you want to get more clarity. I think one of the best things to do is ask about other patients they've treated with the similar thing. What was the outcome? How did it go for them? What's the likelihood of X, Y, Z? For my shoulder surgery, I asked him, I was like, hey, have you ever operated on someone who does jujitsu or wrestling? His answer was no. Like straight up, he was like, no, but he told me all the other sports he focused on. And then that kind of let me know how that may be applied to me. And that did make me feel better. But part of me was also like, this guy doesn't really know like what I'm doing with my shoulder. But he understood sports enough that I felt pretty okay about it. If he worked on only old people who barely move and didn't work on young athletes, I probably wouldn't have gone with him because I would have been like, you don't get my life, you don't get what I'm trying to do here. So he always then, after I asked those questions, explained to me with more of a sport specific examples, which I really appreciated. I'm like, I don't care about reaching up in the cabinet. I want to know when I can like throw people around. And like he understood that's what I was looking for, and that wouldn't have happened if I didn't make it very clear that that was my end goal. So, you can always ask just for more examples and more clarity and just take it slow. You don't need to decide anything right away. And bring support. This is actually a really good one for people who are very nervous. I am not someone I don't ever need someone to come to the doctor with me. Never been a thing I've like felt like I needed. Some people really do. Some people really want someone there in the waiting room. Maybe they're really nervous. Everyone is so different when it comes to medical stuff. But if you need support, bring someone with you just to help keep you grounded. There's nothing wrong with that. If it makes you a little bit less stressed out, I also think that's good. If you're someone who you really can't in the moment remember what's going on or ask good questions, bring someone who can into the room with you. You always can. It's not COVID days anymore, so I don't think they have like big restrictions, but you might be able to bring someone with you who might be able to ask the questions that you can't. This is a really common thing. It's not, don't be embarrassed if this is you, but I will say there's a big disclaimer here. You need to be incredibly careful of asking friends and family for their opinions, because people will interject their own bias, their own traumas, their own experiences onto you, and then you're going to absorb that, and it can totally cloud your decision making. So unless someone has an opinion that I really value, they have no idea what's going on with me. I don't tell them anything, because why? I don't want your opinion. And I think childbirth is probably one of the biggest things. Is you have every woman has such a different childbirth experience, and then one woman who's like newly pregnant talks to her friends about like, what do I do? What's my birth plan? You will get so many drastically different opinions, and it's going to fuck up your own. Maybe it's helpful, but I think these things, like because your friend said doing whatever is terrible and so bad, you will never forget that in your brain, and it's going to cloud your judgment. Maybe she had no idea what she's talking about. She just had a bad experience. We don't know. But I think just keeping opinions only in a very close circle of people who really care about you and maybe could help you advocate for yourself is important. Otherwise, I would say be quiet. Like, don't go spread things all over social media. If you're not ready for a very wide variety of feedback that you're going to get, I just think that's always important. But support is really helpful. And if it's not someone coming to your appointment, maybe you just want to check in with someone at home after your appointment. Like, hey, went over these things, whatever. Like, I always like to do a nice debrief, of my appointments and stuff, because I think it's helpful just to talk things out. But you never have to do that. It kind of depends what your situation is, but I think a lot of people find comfort in sharing things with someone who's very trustworthy. It just helps, process what's going on. So last thing here is, remember that you are the expert in you. Only you know really what's going on within your body. Doctors bring medical expertise. You bring a lived experience. Those two things together is meant to get you the best outcome. If you need to go get a second opinion, it's not a bad thing. Think of people who have very severe diagnoses like cancer. They're always getting second opinions. No one is like, oh, why are you going to another doctor to, get an opinion on your chemo or radiation treatment? People are like, oh my God, of course you would do that. So it's like, we can apply that to literally anything when it comes to a health issue. There's nothing wrong with a second opinion. I think it's always good for, big things like surgeries or whatnot. It's never a bad idea. Sometimes you'll get completely conflicting advice, and then it's up to you to decide whatever feels best for you. But at the end of the day, you are the expert in you. If something feels off, you should trust your gut instinct and keep asking or keep pursuing something until you get an answer or some sort of clarification that makes sense to you. And if you don't feel right, you should really listen to that. And I always had feelings that something was deeper, was kind of off with me or whatever. Even when I got diagnosed with PCOS, I kind of felt like, do I have autoimmune, whatever. I just didn't know how to ask for those things at the time. But I look back and I'm like, I think if I knew how to advocate for myself better, I could have probably gotten a different outcome so much earlier on to avoid a lot of pain and a lot of suffering and a lot of struggles I had, I think could have been cleared up if I just had a better sense of what to ask for or what was going on. But deep down, I always knew something was a little bit more off. And I always had that feeling, even from my eating disorder days in high school and stuff. And it's like, you have to listen to your gut instinct and don't let other people override that, because it's just really important.
Love it. Anything else to add for that section before we go into some specific examples, drugs and things like that?
Yeah, that was a lot, but take notes, ask for the why, ask for bigger picture, get more clarity on what's going on. Don't be afraid to take things a little bit slower, bring support, and then always trust yourself.
I love it. We will have this recapped in a guide, of course. We love our guides, Kat. So the next thing we want to do is tackle some specifics. We know big picture, this is great. There's 1,000 reasons why you might need to go to the doctor. This is just a good cheat sheet to have, but we want to go into some very specific examples that you can take with you. And I just want to be very clear one more time that a doctor will probably save your life one day, will probably save mine if they haven't already. But there's also can be situations where maybe you are suggested a medication you don't need, overprescribed, whatever you want to call it. So we'll go through that. To be unbiased, we're going to start with some drugs that are prescribed appropriately.